Okay, good afternoon, everyone. I would like to welcome everyone and all our viewers to today's Natural Resource Fair webinar. So before I begin with Ivan's presentation, I would like to give a little introduction of our program, which is a Native American Producer Success Project, NAPS in short. So the NAPS project is a collaborative effort between NNDA Inc., a nonprofit organization, New Mexico Cooperative Extension Service, and the NNDA Land Grant Office, the NNDA College Land Grant Office, sorry. The project is funded by USDA's Office of Partnership and Public Engagement, Outreach and Assistance for Socially Disadvantaged and Veteran Farmers and Ranchers program. Okay, so the overall goal of the NAPS project is to increase the profitability and long-term sustainability of Navajo farmers and ranchers. To help us achieve this goal, there are some activities that we are currently undertaking in 4 key areas, which are to improve Navajo farm and ranch operations, increasing our Navajo farmers and ranchers' knowledge of and access to available programs and technical assistance provided by USDA, the BIA, the Navajo Nation, the New Mexico Cooperative Extension Services, the NNDA College Land Grant Office, and others. And then also strengthening the organizational capacity of the Navajo Farmer and Rancher Congress, so to address the current and future needs of Navajo farmers and ranchers. Lastly, facilitating Navajo farmers and ranchers' use of USDA programs such as NRCS, FSA, and RMA programs. So as I mentioned in the previous slide, the NAPS project is here to increase our Navajo farmers and ranchers' knowledge of and access to available programs. One of the ways we accomplish this is by hosting natural resource fairs annually. So normally these natural resource fairs are held at different locations to facilitate information sharing between producers and USDA programs, Navajo Nation programs, university, college, and nonprofit outreach program representatives, and other agricultural service providers and professionals on the range programs and services available to farmers and ranchers on the reservation. But due to the COVID-19 pandemic, public meeting restrictions, we had to get a little creative, and I'm sure this is going to become a new norm. So we are hosting a series of virtual webinars in place of our one-day Natural Resource Fair. So the Natural Resource Fair webinar series began in June. Mark Bentley of the San Juan FSA office provided a presentation on FSA program updates to start us off, followed by Chambliss Lantana of the NRCS program, and Aztec provided another great presentation last week on NRCS conservation programs available in our local area. We have a couple more presentations in the month of July, specifically on July 9th and July 14th. We're still waiting on our presenters to confirm. Once confirmed, we will send out flyers and Zoom invitations. So we'll go ahead and get started with today's webinar, which is going to be the Navajo Tribal Ranches program presented by Ivan Vicente. He is the principal extension agent with the Navajo Nation Department of Ag.
Okay, well, I'll go ahead and get started. Again, thank you again, everybody, and thank you again, Jess, for allowing me to speak today on behalf of the Navajo Nation Department of Agriculture and our Ranch and Eastern Land Management Program. Our Department of Agriculture has gone through some revisions, and we changed our organizational chart. So we used to be known as the Tribal Ranches Program through the Department of Agriculture. Now we've been renamed to the Ranch and Eastern Land Management. So our office also oversees the Eastern Land grazing or land board members. So not only does our office oversee the tribal ranches, but we also oversee the land board members that take care of Eastern Navajo. So that's where we're at today. So our Eastern and Ranch and Eastern Land Management staff, that includes myself. Also, we have Kathy Smith, who is our GIS technician. Ferdinand Nota, he's our program project specialist. And then also Amos Brown, we have out in Eastern, and he's our equipment operator, our heavy equipment operator. A few years ago, we had a budget cut, and we had to cut our extension agent out in Eastern agency. As you all know, that was Wayne Franklin. And then also we had a range conservationist who was Judy Willetto, and she just latter part of last year she had retired. So this is our staff. We're very short, but we do have those vacancies, and we'll be just a note for everybody. You know, we'll be advertising the range conservationist here soon. So if anybody's interested, just keep an eye out on the Navajo Nation webpage for that range conservation position. And then with also the extension agent that should be coming up shortly after that. So that's our staff. And so I'll go ahead and go on with my presentation. As you all know, Department of Agriculture has also partaken in, has been given the reins to oversee the 4th of July Ag Expo and the PRCA Rodeo and also the Navajo Nation Fair. But unfortunate to the COVID-19, all of those have been canceled. So 4th of July should have been happening here to tomorrow all the way through the 4th. So those are just have been canceled. So just for your information. So our Eastern and Ranch Land Management Program, we've, as you guys all see there, we've taken a budget cut, and that's where we lost our extension agent back in 2018. As you all see there, we had a budget of $500,000 that year, and that's when we had to lay off some people, and one of them was our extension agent for Eastern. A very vital person and also a position that is needed. And as you all know, even with what we're going through right now, and also with the drought and so forth, we definitely need our extension agent back out there, not only to oversee the program, but also to assist farmers and ranchers. So since then, 2019, and then our current year, our budget is back up to 700,000. So we're able to open our doors back open and also assist a lot of the ranchers and mainly ranchers out in Eastern through our program. But every time we have a budget cut, that really affects our operations, our supply materials, a lot of our projects, and infrastructure improvements. And that's what I had touched on just a few minutes ago, is our personnel. So we lost 2 of those. I think within the newspapers and also through a lot through the state of New Mexico. I don't know if everybody's have heard, but we've gone through some land exchange through the state of New Mexico. We lost 2 of our ranches down in Alamo. And those two ranch are what's called East South Ranch and then also the Henderson Ranch. But the East South Ranch is also well known as the Berry Ranch. So both total together, we're looking about 42,000 acres of land that we turned over to the state. And the reason why this all took place was within Eastern Agency, there was a lot of non-compliance on greater Eastern Navajo as a broad, people moving on to state lands and new homes being built on state lands, burials. So a lot of this has been noted as being non-compliant within the state, the state of New Mexico Land Department's eyes. So our land department had to take action, and we had to pretty much overturn our two ranches within Alamo in order to suffice and then also to become compliant. So as you all know, and I think most of you are probably ranchers that are online right now. I don't know who's all in attendance within this webinar, but a lot of us ranchers are looking for additional lands to graze our livestock. We do need a lot of rain at this time for our forage to continue to grow. And our livestock don't have an on and off switch. So they'll continue to graze and graze until there's no food. So we don't want that to happen. So losing these two ranches was pretty hit us hard, and it was vital to our program. But on the other hand, we're able to be the first in line to release these two ranches from the state. Now, with that comes a cost of leasing those two ranches within our program. So we're in the midst of filling out our applications and getting those finalized. And this was all done through the prior commissioner for the New Mexico State Land Department. So that's where we're at on these. So once everything is finalized, we'll be able to lease these two ranches back out to our Navajo constituents. So just to keep an ear out for these. But the only thing is the ranches are down in Alamo, and if everybody knows where Alamo is, it's quite away from Eastern or even the Window Rock area. So it'll be quite a drive. And within our ranch program, we do have 89 windmills throughout tribal ranches. And as everybody knows right now, there's no precipitation, there's no rain. This has been vital to our program, not only to the program, but also to our ranchers. Ranchers currently with the conditions now have been experiencing a lot of hardship. Now, we partner with the Navajo Nation Water Resources Department, and due to the COVID-19, they have been closed. They haven't been assessing or repairing any of our windmills. We've got a lot of ranchers that are hauling water right now, which we shouldn't be doing, but they've been managing to get water out to the livestock at this point. And we've been in communication with our council delegates, and two of them are from Eastern Agency. We've been talking with Water Resources, and then also with the main headquarters of Water Resources in Fort Defiance. So as of yesterday, we finally got word that Water Resources will be coming back online so that they can start managing and repairing a lot of the windmills within tribal ranches, and I'm sure throughout greater Navajo as well. So Water is vital to our livestock, not only in the cattle business, but also within for sheep and then also horses that are out there. Um, Water infrastructure assessments, those have been ongoing every year, and there are a lot of windmills that have been built, have been drilled since these ranches were purchased. Now, a lot of these ranches were purchased back in the 40s and the 50s, and you could just imagine what wear and tear they've gone through all these years. And there are quite a few that have been rehabilitated with putting in some new casings, and but we do see a lot of damage due to the excessive winds and so forth. And then also just with the minerals that are within our waters, they really do tear up our windmills too. So, but on the other hand, with our staff, Amos, he's been doing some minor repairs. He does have some knowledge within the windmill industry. And then we also have some ranchers and a few ranchers that are able to assist us through this whole COVID-19 pandemic as well, to assist other ranchers. So we've got one gentleman that's been helping other ranchers pull a lot of these sucker rods and changing leathers and so forth. So, but that also comes with the cost and wear and tear on vehicles and so forth. So that's what we're experiencing, and I think a lot of our ranchers out there within Greater Navajo are experiencing each of these problems. So, but through our program, we've been also doing some dirt work. We had to purchase a backhoe quite a few years ago, so Amos has been cleaning out some dirt tanks. And a few of those ranches are Karika Ranch, Elkins Ranch, Shaw Ranch, IK, Pitts, Berry Hill. So there's many more to name, but we're doing the best we could to get these windmills and keep them in operation or rehabilitate them. So, but a lot of this we have to go through water resources. As opposed to many years ago, a lot of these windmill repairs and maintenance were also contracted out. So, we had to get a hold and a grasp of a lot of these contracts and then bring them back within our Navajo Nation department. So we have to work closely with water resources to address a lot of these. And I believe there are a lot of cattle producers out there and some new up and comers and some young generation ranchers that want a shot or at least a lease to lease one of the lands and ranches through us. As you all see on the screen there, we do have a leasing process, and that would require a letter of interest and a resume coming from each of the producers applying for one of these ranches. Now, the application and letter of interest, those would come to our office until we announce any of the ranches that are up for availability. Now, we would make that announcement come at the end of the year or at the beginning of a new year. Now, our Tribal Ranch program in the past have gone through an audit, and through that audit, we have to be fair across the board to all Navajo producers. And within that process, we have to make it known in newspapers, radio, so that all Navajo producers hear about our availability of these ranches. And with that is basically the single word term of being fair. So once we do make that announcement of any said ranch, that's when our ranchers can apply and submit their letter of interest, resume, and application. So what would also be included in that application process would be a copy of a brand card. Also a ranch management plan, and then a copy of a grazing permit. Now, the ranches is open and available to any Navajo producer that is 18 years of age or older. And if anybody does have a grazing permit, that grazing permit has to be stated on there that you have to have 75 sheep units or less. Anything above 75, you're not able to apply for any of the ranches. So at the time that we make this announcement, we would put into a package of where these ranches are located, the size of the ranch, the carrying capacity of these ranches, an inventory of the forage that are available on that ranch, what the stocking rate would be, a listing of the noxious, or even if there's any toxic weeds, those would all be listed within that packet. And that's when a producer can put together a ranch management plan. Now, that ranch management plan will entail everything on how you as a producer will oversee that ranch, take care of that ranch, and how you would use other entities such as USDA, the FSA office, the NRCS office on helping you manage the ranch. So also included within the application would be if anybody has an Indian allotment, they have to have less than 50% of the shares within that allotment in order to apply. We also ask to see financial documents. So, and as some people do know that a lot the ranch program, we offer these ranches, and they have to be paid for on an annual basis. So we want to make sure to take a look at the financial documents and that the individual is able to handle an annual fee to our department. So those would all be submitted to our ranch office, and that goes through a review process. So if we put out 5 ranches that are available and there's only one producer that applies for, let's say, Ranch A, that applicant will be automatically submitted to go through the 164 review process. And that means going through a few of our offices within the Navajo Nation, whether you be going through our own office to our division. It also goes through land department. It also goes through our Department of Justice, and then also to our controller's office for procurement to make sure that the individual that's applying for the ranch does not owe the Navajo Nation any money. So once that is cleared, then it goes to the Resource and Development Committee. Yeah, and the Resource and Development Committee are the ones to approve that ranch for this applicant. And if it's favorable to them, then that is forwarded over to the president's office for final approval, and that one applicant will be awarded that ranch. So as you see on the screen, if there are more than 2 applicants for a ranch, it goes through a competitive bid process. Now, if there's two or more through that competitive bid, we would ask for those applicants to provide an amount of how much they're going to bid per head on that ranch. So these bids will all be sealed. And back in 2010, well, actually 2009 is when the last competitive bid has happened. Now, during that time, applicants, there were more than 2 applicants per ranch that was all made available. So therefore, it went straight directly into a bid process. So how that was done was there was a selection committee that was selected. They read all the ranch management plans for those ranches, and the top 5 were selected to move on to the next step, which was opening of the bids. Now, the person that bid it the most was definitely awarded that ranch. Now, from my recollection, there were a few that had, been awarded more than 2 ranches. So that rancher had to select whichever ranch they wanted the most. So, in other words, they would have to have forfeited one of the other ranches that they've been also selected. So therefore, the second person that was the highest bidder was awarded that said ranch too. So it all goes through a selection team. So whoever bid it the most also went through a 164 review through our various offices and to make sure that they're clear. And then that went forward to the Resource and Development Committee. And that's where the committee voted. And if it was in favor, then that went over for the president's approval. So that's our process within the ranch program on how to apply, how the selection is done. It goes through the selection committees and then through our various offices through RDC and president's approval. Now, through our ranch program, we do have some ranchers that are still waiting to go before the Resource and Development Committee, and they were just about there until this COVID also happened. So we're held up there. And I've been in communication with one of our delegates from the Resource and Development Committee member, and they wanted to move forward on a lot of these leases. And also within new leases is also, we've got quite a few ranchers that are waiting for renewals as well. So through the ranch program, there are 3 types of leases that we have. One of them is once a rancher has been awarded a ranch, they can operate on that ranch for 10 years. The second is at the end of their first 10-year term, and upon our office evaluating, doing an assessment of the ranch, doing an on-field, on-site visit, and meeting with the rancher, and if that ranch is favorable and that rancher has been doing everything that they have stated within the ranch management plan and have been doing improvements, then that would mean that we are approving that individual for another 10 years. So essentially, 20 years would be what a rancher can ranch on any of our ranches. So that's the second type of lease. And then the third type is an extraordinary lease or a temporary lease. And that's if we do have ranches that are available, then we can lease those ranches on a temporary basis at 6 months intervals. So those are the three types of leases that we have within our program. Now, as you all see on screen, this is the drought monitor as of this morning. This was based on the reported date of June 23rd. We've been in Arizona within that Apache County. We've been abnormally dry and then also moderate drought. So that's for the state of Arizona. Now this one is showing for the state of New Mexico. We see some abnormally dry areas. Looking at the key chart to the right, there's a moderate drought. And then also severe drought. And then extreme drought. So we endure what, 4 types of drought conditions within our San Juan County region. And then we are experiencing 3 types within our McKinley. And then in Sandoval County, Rio Arriba. Those are the counties that we have a lot of our ranches. But as ranchers, I think we would say that we're in extreme drought. And I think a lot of us would agree, just with the hardship we're having right now with the amount of precipitation that we're not getting. And, watching the news just recently, I think within our region, we've only got about 2 inches of rain. Now, 2 inches of rain would be good on one day, but the 2 inches of rain that was calculated is actually year to date. Now, year to date means from January 2020 to June, I'm sorry. So 2 inches of rain, that's nothing. So I'm sure a lot of you watched weather, places within our eastern coast down towards our southeastern area of the United States. They've been getting 5 to 8 inches. Now that's where a lot of the floods do happen. Now here on Navajo, if it does rain 1 inch within 1 hour, that's where we see some floods. We see a lot of water running off our range. So with the 2 inch that is calculated from year to date, that's very, very little on a daily basis. So a lot of our forage do require more than 2 inches of year-to-date rain in order for it to grow. So I think a lot of our ranchers do see a lot of their earth tanks dry or drying up and not recharging, not refilling. So this drought has really hit us hard. And it's been continuing, and it's just progressing each and every year. So that's a little snapshot of a lot of the range conditions within our New Mexico ranches. Now, keep in mind, we have one ranch, Peaks Ranch, that's located in Flagstaff, just on the north side of the peak. We also have the Winslow Track ranches, that's located within Winslow area. And we also have the Big Boquillas Ranch, which is also located in Seligman, Arizona. Now, just to give some information out to everybody that's online right now, I've been telling our ranches ranchers within our ranch program that the Big Boquillas Ranch had been recently renewed, but this was 4 years ago. Now, next year would be his last year. This renewal was done during the Begay administration, and President Begay at the time wants that ranch to go back to Navajo to be operated by a Navajo rancher producer. And if you all know the Big Boquillas, whether you've seen it online, whether you've read it in the papers, or you've heard it within our ranch program, that ranch is the biggest ranch in the state of Arizona. It's 65 miles north to south and 45 miles east to west. Now that's a big ranch, and the carrying capacity for that ranch is 10,000 head. But right now, the rancher that's operating that ranch right now, he's probably at about 6,000 head, just because of the drought. Now within the Begay administration, like I said, he wants a Navajo producer to be producing on that ranch, and that was what was written into his lease, is that a Navajo producer take over that ranch. Now, built into that lease, we need a Navajo individual to work with the Big Boquillas right now, so that that individual will know where all the water lines are, where all the fences are, where the problem areas are, to know where the grass are going to be growing at different times, different intervals throughout the year. So we need somebody on the ground over there right now. That ranch has over 400 miles of pipe. A lot of that pipe has been corroding and deteriorating, and the rancher right now has been replacing a lot of those water lines with black PE pipe, whereas before a lot of those water lines were all steel. So with President Begay at the time, he wants that ranch to be turned back to Navajo, so that's where we're looking for Navajo producers to take over that ranch. Now within that comes the cost of leasing that ranch. The lease payment on Big Boquillas is $675,000 a year. So keep in mind that that's a hefty cost. So that's just a rental fee that is paid to the program. Now within that too comes the Arizona State grazing lease. On the producer's part, he pays about $185,000 to the state of Arizona for the grazing leases. And through our program, we pay about $45,000 to the state. So when you add those numbers up, it's pretty hefty. So, but we do want a Navajo producer to start producing on Big Boquillas. So that's where the term of associations or creating a co-op would probably be the best choice to run cattle out there. But our program has also looked into even buying out the rancher, which means buying the cattle that are there on the ranch already, and that somebody takes over that ranch. Since the cattle are accustomed to that area, they know the range, so that anybody that's going to take over at any point in time, if they were to put some new cattle there, those cattle are probably going to take a little dip for a bit until they become accustomed to that area. So that's on the table. If anybody's interested, or if anybody's interested in working with the Big Boquillas Ranch on getting to know the ins and outs of that ranch, so that anybody can form an association or a co-op to start ranching on the Big Boquillas. So that's, like I said, his lease is coming up next year. So just keep your ears open, and if anybody's willing to tackle that, let us know. So we were talking about drought just a bit ago. We have the rainfall index insurance that's administered by the USDA through the Risk Management Agency. And as you all know, the Navajo Nation has bought insurance for pretty much all of Navajo. And the Department of Agriculture does oversee the insurance dollars that do come in. And we do have Mr. Ferdinand Nota that pretty much oversees this insurance program. And I believe it's been about 17 million, I believe, is what has come in. And that's how we're helping our ranchers do a lot of programs here on Navajo, whether it be buying supplemental feed, hay, but also we're also looking to fund a lot of the projects on Navajo. But what I can speak to at this point would be what's going on our ranches, on our ranch program, through the dollars that we've received through the insurance. There was $1 million that was allocated to the ranch program. And that's with this whole COVID-19, we're able to purchase some hay through NAPI and assist some of our ranchers with 2 one-ton bales. So that's going to be continuing here shortly once we get once we secure 2 more loads of that hay. And also we're looking to purchase supplements too for our ranches. Also, at this time, we also have some fencing materials that have just come in. A lot of our ranches have been dilapidated and aging. So we're also giving out half a mile of fencing material to our ranchers so that they can mend some fences or completely replace some of the fences throughout the ranch. And once that rancher is done with that half a mile fencing, we can do a field inspection and make sure that all the materials were used on the ranches. And then at that point in time, we can give another half a mile so that we give out a total of 1 mile of fencing material. So just to let everybody know, the nation does help a lot of the ranchers out there, but it always takes one bad apple to ruin things for everybody else. And that's the reason why we've broken our fencing materials down by half a mile that we allocate to our ranchers. Just to give a little bit of history, we had given some fencing to one of our ranchers, and come to find out our materials ended up at the flea market in Gallup. So that kind of ruined it for everybody. So we can only do half a mile at this time, and then we'll do the inspection, make sure all the materials were used. And then we can give another half a mile to give to our lessees. So also through the insurance program, a lot of these programs that I just mentioned, the supplement, the hay, fencing, also will help Greater Navajo, the big reservation side. And I believe the the agriculture department is looking to secure additional supplements so that we can give those to our ranchers. And then also we do have a conservation project that we're also funding. There's quite a few ranchers that have put together their projects on how they're going to improve the ranches. There are some that are wanting to extend their water lines, and extending these water lines throughout the ranch and with some cross fencing that creates for a better management of the ranch and also rotating a lot of the cattle throughout these ranches. But then again, we have to have and ensure that we are getting sufficient amount of water from whether it be our windmills. One of the big things that we're going to be starting here shortly too, and we're pretty much finalizing the contract with one of the contractors, is installing and converting windmills over to solar. Now we've got 5 ranches that we're looking at on converting their windmills to total solar with the backup of either a generator or propane powered backup system. So now that's going to be a hefty cost, and we're looking about $200,000 to $250,000 per conversion. So after the 5 are done, we're looking to convert all of our 89 windmills over to solar. And I kid you not, there's some areas, some ranches where there's no wind at all. So those ranchers endure hardship just because there's no wind. It's not pumping any of the water. So point of solar is wise, but it's going to be a hefty cost, and that's where the insurance dollars that are given to our program will be utilized as well. So the programs that I just mentioned, it's all coming from what we call the Agriculture Infrastructure Fund. Those funds are available at this time. Insurance premiums for the insurance program, those are due in October. The indemnity payments that come in from the Agriculture Infrastructure Fund, like I said, the ranch program, we've received $1 million for year 1 and then also for year 2. And I think for 2020, that'll be year 3. So our ranchers will be looking forward to some of those dollars to come out of that year 3 funding so that we can further those improvements throughout the ranches. Our bull leasing program, we've got 49 bulls now. And back in May, we received 32 new bulls. Now, 32 new bulls all came from the state of Montana. Those of you that have leased some of our bulls, that was from the Basin Ranch in Hobson, Montana. Those are our bulls that are at the age of 10 years now. And we're pretty much done with those bulls, and I've got very few of those bulls still left within the herd. And if you've been with our program for a while, we've also purchased some bulls from Minnesota, and I believe our 10-year-old bulls have outperformed a lot of the young bulls that we have. So we went back with the ranch up in Montana for these 32 head that we have now. They're yearlings right now. They're a little bit on the small side, but they've been growing since we received them in May. So if anybody is still looking for bulls, we do have bulls there at the fairgrounds. Anybody can take a look at them. The lease on them are $1,000 each. They're all trick and breeding soundness tested. We got a little late start in middle of May, just because of the government shutdown and the COVID-19. But the requirement's still the same. In order to lease any of our bulls, you'll need a permit or a lease. We'll need a beef quality assurance certification, and then also herd health records. We need 2 years of herd health records from anybody that's looking to lease any of our bulls. You get to use the bulls for 3 months, and we've got some producers that would lease for 2 months as well. It just all depends on each of the producers' breeding. So we've got 17 4-year-olds right now over at the fairgrounds, and then all the rest are yearling. So anybody interested, just get a hold of us and take a look at the bulls. If there's any to your liking, then you can definitely lease that from us. Well, that's the end. I don't know if anybody has any questions.
We have some questions that came in during your presentation.
Okay.
Okay, so the first question is,
Okay.
the Navajo ranchers that are leasing from Navajo Nation, are they able to apply for the FSA programs such as NAP, the Non-Insured Crop Disaster Assistance Program, or LFP with the Livestock Forage Program?
Yes, any of the livestock producers can apply through USDA for the NAP, and then also the livestock programs. But they have to have a valid lease if they're one of our ranchers right now.
Good afternoon, Ivan. Good afternoon, Jesse. Okay, Ivan. So specifically, so you're saying that you'd like to maybe at some point lease this ranch out to a tribal rancher or an individual with Navajo Nation. Is it required that you have them on the ranch going over all the issues, or is it just kind of a suggestion?
No, it was suggested by the lessee that's on there right now, and then also we had suggested that from our ranch program too. Anybody that's wanting or interested on moving on to big boquillas after this gentleman's lease ends. And the reason being is just because the lessee right now does have workers that live on the ranch, and they oversee. He's got a gentleman that oversees just a water line on a daily basis line. So anybody that's interested on moving and taking over the big boquillas lease, it just be in their best interest to know the ins and outs of that, or whether it be within the fencing or whether it be with the whole water line distribution, like that's installed on that ranch. And there's only one main well, and I believe that well produces over 200 gallons per minute. So, and it's all pumped up to the top of the mesa, and there's two 1 million or two 500,000 gallon storage tanks out there, and that water is all gravity fed from there throughout the whole. Or if there's an association or a co-op that really wants to take on the big boquillas, it'd be best to have somebody live out there, and it's even welcomed by the lessee right now to be out there and know figure out the ins and outs of the ranch before it's turned fully over 100% to a Navajo producer.
Okay, very good. And another question: are you guys going to probably no competitive bid, but let's just say someone has the opportunity to acquire a loan and get that ranch, and I guess your lease is $675,000 a year plus $185 to the state of Arizona. let's just say you guys buy the ranch, or well, no, excuse me, buy the cattle and take over the cattle. Is that where you guys would still have a vested interest, or are you guys going to require the new lessee to pay off the cattle that you guys purchased to keep on the ranch? Any ideas on how you guys would, try to, work around that as well?
Okay. Well, one option is the lessee right now that's on there.
Right.
He totally moves the cattle out. He takes the cattle with him. The other option was any Navajo producer that is willing to take on the big boquillas would take over the ranch, put their own cattle on the ranch. And then the third option was if there's not anybody interested at this point in time, then the Department of Agriculture was looking to buy the cattle out from the lessee right now. So in other words, the cattle wouldn't be just given to a new producer that's wanting to move in. You know what I mean? It's either
Okay.
For the new lessee that's coming in would bring their own cattle.
Right.
But that was one of the other option was the nation takes over that ranch as a whole, and then that we would buy the cattle, so that just because the cattle would be accustomed to that area. So in other words, for example, it would be like me, we've got 17 cows out at Winslow Ranch right now, and we've got 49 bulls now. So that's not going to, that's not nearly 10,000 head. But if we were to move on solely as a ranch program, we'll most likely buy the cattle out from him, so that we don't have to have new cattle having to become accustomed to the area. So that was one
Yeah.
of the options. And that was President Begay's push, was to definitely get a Navajo producer to take back boquillas. There's different ways, but like I was saying, it's a hefty price, but maybe one way would be to, work as an association or as a co-op to take over the ranch.
Okay. Will there be any screening
And the
of the
reason
co-op?
being, oh
Okay.
yeah, they'll be just like our regular leases. They have to be going through the whole 164 screening process.
Another question that came in is, are the funds from the drought insurance assisting the regular Navajo ranchers since their grazing lands are already being insured?
Yes, that's where we have to get the Department of Agriculture had to be creative on spending those dollars for Greater Navajo. When I mean Greater Navajo, I'm talking outside of Tribal Ranch program.
Okay.
And the reason why I say it that way is because, there was a lot of discussion within our department on how are we going to help our producers back out. And I'll take even like right now, chapter assistance. Anytime that any of the chapters do assist a community with hay, a semi-load of hay comes in, and that's distributed throughout the community, right? There comes in issues with permits, who's actually permitted to have livestock. Questions come out in regards to tallies, who's got their tally and who hasn't. And then we also have a lot of producers that don't even have permits that do have livestock on Navajo. So we hashed that out so many times. And one great example is for the whole Navajo Nation. I'm talking Arizona, New Mexico, and Utah. Now, if the Department of Agriculture did buy hay, let's say we'll take the whole pot of 17 million if $17 million worth of hay was purchased, now if we distributed that out to all cattle, sheep, and horse producers, then how many bales is that going to equate to? You know, so let's say, for example, if somebody has 5 head of sheep, maybe one bale is going to last them, you know, one day. But what if somebody has 5 head of cattle? That one bale is not even going to be sufficient. So it's a little tough, and that's where the supplement program came into light. What can we purchase, and how do we help Navajo back that is going to be able to last more than a day, let alone one feeding, you know? So we were looking at supplement tubs. Supplement tubs can last quite a few days depending on how many head are out there, how many head a producer has. So we looked at purchasing some supplement tubs for cattle, and then also supplement tubs for sheep. Now, as cattle, and I'm sure there's a lot of cattle producers online. I don't know who's all online right now, but cattle producers are very particular on what they get. They want to make sure that a lot of the ingredients within the supplement tubs are going to be viable and worthy for the cattle, as opposed to, you know, filler products, filler ingredients within those mineral tubs. So the same goes for sheep producers, and sheep do require different type of minerals, and, you know, even comes down to some minerals aren't sufficient or shouldn't be given to sheep versus, you know, cattle. But on the other hand, there are some tubs that are made, you know, for both sheep, goats, and cattle. So we had to be conscious of what we're going to be getting, what are going to be the ingredients, and all that sorts of stuff too. So, but that's how we're helping Navajo back. Instead of just hay, we're looking at supplement tubs, and then in the long run too, you know, the drought insurance, what is it really for? You know, it's because there's no rain, so we're being compensated. So better yet, the dollars would be spent on projects, on conservation projects for Navajo. So that's where Ferdinand had not only asked our ranch program lessees, but also Greater Navajo, and not only producers, but also communities, chapters, and even through their grazing officials, to submit projects of what they want to do within their communities, to put a project together on what they want to how they want to conserve the land, whether it be fencing, whether it be soil erosion control, wind erosion, all that kind of stuff. So there are projects that are that Ferdinand does have in hand right now, and those dollars will be going to those communities or those producers, and to help ensure that a lot of these projects get done within the communities. And then that's where also the Conservation Corps is also funded through our Agriculture Infrastructure Fund. The Conservation Corps is within the Department of Agriculture right now, and that's headed by a gentleman by the name of Ed Miles Harvey. And I know they've been assisting ranchers and farmers with some fencing, whether it be boundary fencing or even fencing of the cropland. But also they're looking at some brush clearing. I know they've done some work over within the wheat fields area, the saline area, with some tree thinning, and then also using some of the limbs from the trees, and, you know, instilling some conservation projects such as, you know, soil and wind erosion structures out there on Navajo. So we had to be creative on how we're going to give back and how we're going to assist, and how we're going to help heal the land is where it boils down to, instead of just giving dollars as a handout. So that's how those the funds are used right now.
How are you informing the permitted ranchers about the supplement program?
We've given to our ranch program, we've given that information to them at our quarterly ranch meeting. Before all this COVID outbreak has happened, we had quarterly ranch meetings with our producers, and we've given information out at that time. We've educated them on the supplement program. We've given forms out so that we know who's applying for the supplement programs, and by the number of cattle that they have on the ranches, we'll distribute how many tubs we give them. So that's how they got information. But that's also happened throughout Greater Navajo as well. We have some staff, Kim Johnson, and then also Roxy, June, and Ray Castillo. I think pretty much all of our extension agents within Northern, Western, and Central and 45th Agency, and within Eastern too, because we oversee Eastern Navajo. So a lot of these forms were given to our land board members and then also to our grazing officials to give out to their producers, so that the producers fill out these forms and then return them to our office, so that we know how many supplement tubs we can order. Then again, like I was saying earlier, we do have cattle producers, we have sheep, and then also goats. So to speak to that in relation to our Eastern Navajo side, there were some producers that were reluctant to fill out some of these forms. So we had some land board members that only had about just a handful, maybe 10 or 12 producers that filled out their forms. But we know that there are a lot more producers that actually have permits out there, but they just didn't fill out the forms. So I do have a total number in the office of how many tubs that we can allocate for our Eastern Agency. And I believe one good example is Pinedale and Mariano Lake. There was only 5 forms turned in. So I know that there's a lot more producers within Pinedale and Mariano Lake area. But we've only got 5 forms that were turned in. As opposed to Crown Point, there was, and not only Crown Point, but also to Jones Ranch area, there was about close to 100 forms that were turned in. So it just depends on different communities. A lot of people turned in quite a few, and then there are a few that turned in very little. So thank you.
Good afternoon, Ivan. This is Marge Lantana. It's very good to hear your voice. And also it's very good to hear Jesse's voice. And also I hear my son in the background someplace too. Yeah, well, I'm so thankful that you had developed this webinar for our producers. And since we're practicing this regulations that we should not gather at social place to meet. I have a question here concerning the $600 million, and that's supposed to be spent by December. Okay, a lot of us tribal ranch lessees are experiencing water source. So the question is, particularly for myself and some other people, do you have a list of work order or the lessees or maybe those permittees that had requested for a work order on that list, so this project can be tackled? So that's number one question. And the second one is I just want to commend all of you guys that are in aquaculture program, that you are running with your cattle producing food. You guys are doing a great job, and we're feeding Americans. And you probably know that I sit on New Mexico Beef Council, and the Beef Council is doing all they can promoting, although there's obstacles that had affected from this COVID-19, but we're still in it, and we're still running with this business. So yeah, you guys have not given up on us, and all you ranchers that are listening out there, keep it going. You know, we're gonna all get through this horrible virus pretty soon. So, and I just wanted to say that to all of you. And again, I just like to know if we're on the list to get our work order done, because I thought I will never encounter a water source issue, but I am now. And at times I just wondered, maybe I should just get your vendor listing and see if I can handle this price, but I don't know if I can handle buying a big old thousands of gallon storage tank. So my question is, are we on the list for that $600 million to get our work order done for all the tribal ranches and maybe some permittees that are having water source issue for their livestock to continue their operations?
Okay, thank you, Marge.
You're welcome.
The 600 million, that I don't have control over. I wish I did. Then everybody would have went solar, here in a few months.
Wow.
What we're working through to try to get a lot of our windmills repaired and restored and maintained is through the Agriculture Infrastructure Fund right now. And
Okay.
I know I've received, that's pretty much all my calls are on a daily basis is windmill issues. But the dollars that are coming to repair and maintain the windmills is all coming from the Agriculture Infrastructure Fund right now.
Okay.
But it's not going to be coming out of the 600 million that was, allocated due to the COVID outbreak. I do hear all of my ranchers' frustrations of hauling water, and I know 2 of them are your neighbors too, and they've been hauling water since this whole outbreak. And but I got a short list of windmill parts and materials that should be coming in soon. Those are just for the very quick fixes, such as changing leathers. And changing leathers, we can check the cylinders at the time too. And sucker rods. Like I said, a lot of these wells and troughs they're old. So we've seen some pictures of some of the float valves, even the pipe coming out from, whether it be the tire drinker or whether it be a pipe going into any of the steel troughs. A lot of them are rusting out. So we've got some valves on order. We've got some, pancake floats and all that kind of stuff. Those should be coming in soon. So those are the quick fixes that we could do, that Amos could do. And then there's one rancher that he's brave enough to go out and do some of the windmills too on some of the ranchers' ranches, and pulling sucker rods and pulling all the rods out with his truck too. So that's where that's how we've been operating and trying to maintain the ranch windmills. But like I don't know if you were on earlier, we've had issues with water resource. They had stated that they didn't have any PPEs to be working.
Mm-hmm.
But I've been talking with Delegate Freeland, and then also Edmund Yazzie. And, and just in fact, Edmund just texted me a little bit earlier, and he said, what's the status of the windmills? So we finally got our voice heard, and Tarek from the Water Resource Department finally wanted a list. And I've given this list over to Edmund Yazzie too. So he wanted to know the names of the ranchers and where the ranch is, the name of the ranches, so that Water Resource can come back online to start doing the repairs. So I did create a list quite some time ago and forward that over to Delegate Yazzie. So he's the one that reached out to the president's office, and I think that's where Water Resource got the directive to get some of the field staff back in the office to start repairing these windmills, because I think throughout all Navajo, not only just the tribal ranches, but they all need windmills repaired. So they're coming back online, and as of yesterday, Ferdinand and I talked, and I guess Tarek wanted the name, so I forwarded that over to Kathy and then also to Ferdinand, so that we can get those names over to Water Resource so they can start repairing these. So yes, I do have a list, and then but the 600 million, that that's something that I can't touch unless it's just allocated from council themselves to our department. But we're running
Mm-hmm.
off of the infrastructure fund, how to pay for these parts and materials. So. But that's where we're at. Okay.
Okay, thank you. I'll forward you an email.
Mm-hmm.
Another question, will some of the drought funds go towards the renovation of windmills, and how will communities, ranchers be prioritized in Greater Navajo?
We do. I do have a listing of our ranchers for the ranch program of which ones need to be repaired. So I do have that list. And how is it prioritized? Basically, just on who had made that request first. So we have an ongoing list from the day that this outbreak happened and the Navajo Nation shut down. So basically, that's how I have it prioritized. But then again, we do have some ranchers that do share windmills too. So that kind of benefits, repairing one mill, and that solves two ranches or three ranches in some cases. So that's how it's done. But for Greater Navajo, the Agriculture Infrastructure Fund, through that, we've given, I don't know the exact dollar amount, but the Department of Water Resource was given a few $1 million to repair and maintain windmills throughout Greater Navajo. So not just tribal ranches, but in Northern Agency, Central, Western, and Fort Defiance Agency. So those dollar amounts already went straight to Water Resources. So did another amount. There's a couple of million that did go to Department of Fish and Wildlife. So there's different programs that got money in order to address a lot of these issues. So it's not just through Department of Agriculture that we oversee all the windmills. So Water Resource did get an allocation to address the windmill repair needs throughout Greater Navajo.
How is the NNDA working with NRCS as far as improving water infrastructure for farmers and ranchers?
Through our ranch program, we do ask that our producers work with NRCS to stretch the dollar amount so that they can work with the NRCS programs. And I think majority of the programs that work with NRCS through our ranchers some would be fencing, but I think a lot of it is water line improvements, whether it be distribution, extending a lot of those water lines. And then there's quite a few that work on conservation projects such as wind and soil erosion, some rock and brush structures, and then so that's how our ranch, our lessees utilize NRCS funds. And but there are some projects that we can apply through NRCS as a department or as a program, and that's how we're doing this windmill to solar conversion, is working with USDA, whether through NRCS and then partnering up with USDA so that we extend the dollars that we have, our upfront costs, and then partnering with NRCS to further develop a lot of these ranches. Like I said, a windmill to solar conversion, I think the dollar figure that we're looking at is about $250,000. Our ranchers, nobody has $250,000 right now to go change a windmill to solar right now. So it's best to work through the NRCS programs to do it and then complete it as a partnership. But we can for sure, assist our lessees with putting in some of the dollars towards those projects too.
These announcements for fencing material, how soon can one make a request to access material? Some tribal ranchers are unaware of these supplies that are available.
For the ranch program, that's what that's what we secured the fencing material for, is our lessees. So we just got these in. We made this request way before the COVID outbreak, and we hadn't even picked up the material until about a week ago. So our ranchers, we haven't reached out to all of them yet, but we do have the fencing material at the office now, and we just have to coordinate with each of them, to let me know when they're available to pick it up, so that I can have staff there, or I could have myself there to pick up these materials, because we're looking about over 100 T-posts. We're looking at 24 rolls of barbed wire, and then we're also looking at some stays and some clips. Stays and clips can be loaded easy, but rolls of barbed wire, we're talking 20 plus barbed wire, so we definitely need some muscle. So basically just coordinating with us to see when our ranchers can show up so that we can load them out.
Has there been a suggestion to subdivide that ranch to allow more Navajo producers the opportunity to? It's a bit hard to believe a single Navajo producer to attain that property and run that many cattle. It also seems difficult for one to establish an association to allow multiple producers to share. What she's referring to is, are you going to be able to cross fence to allow more ranchers onto the ranch, or is it a whole lease?
That ranch comes as a whole. Okay, that's the difficult part. Now, like I said, the Big Boquillas Ranch is quite large, and the ranch is also checkerboarded just like Eastern Agency. One land we own as a fee land, or what we call private land, and there's no fences in between our fee lands and the state lands. Okay, so like I said, it's checkerboarded. It's heavily checkerboarded, but it is all one ranch. Like I was saying, 65 miles from north to south and 45 sideways. And there are pasture fencings right now. There's over 20 pastures that are already fenced. And the reason why I can't break this ranch up is because of the state grazing lease. Now, if a co-op or an association is developed to operate that ranch, they have to have one brand. Now, this happened when when we had issues with permittees over at Peaks Ranch over in Flagstaff. That branch is a U.S. Forest Service permit that we utilize. So the same goes for that over at Big Boquillas. Any of the cattle that are within Big Boquillas would have to have one brand. Now, I've given this example to our ranch program lessees before, and to some community chapters that I've given this presentation to, is whoever goes in there, yes, it is hard for somebody to have at least 6,000 to 10,000 head, but that's the reason why I said it's best that an association or a co-op take over, because the cattle all have to be branded with one brand. And how we did that with Peaks Ranchers was the cattle association that put in cattle over at Peaks Ranch. They're all pretty much from Western Agency within the Black Mesa area. So they utilize, and we made sure that every one of those cows were branded with the bar in, and that's how we sufficed for the one brand. Even though let's say there were 20 owners, they had their own 3-character BIA brands. But for the state of New Mexico, a lot of the New Mexico producers have their own state brands, and it's going to be different. But it's going to be a little tough to try to get everybody to go with one brand, and I don't think anybody would want to go with the bar in, just with the history. And also, once you get to the cattle sale, a lot of bar ins get discounted. But on the other hand, we've been changing the bar in brand image too, just with our genetics, with our bulls, and not only our bulls, but a lot of cattle producers have been aware of, genetics and all the works. But our cattle are Navajo cattle are really needed and wanted, in the sale today. So I know a lot of our lessees have acquired partnerships with a lot of these buyers and auctioneers that the cattle stand good for what they are and how they're bred, and how durable they are and how they grow out well too. So we would have to get over the one brand process. On the flip side of that, yeah, it is tough to operate together. And we all, as Navajos, I know we all don't get together as a family as well. So that's going to be something to overcome. And if anybody wants to lease the Big Boquillas, they're just all going to have to work together and get along too. So one thing that we've talked about is having shares within the cattle herd, so that everybody has an equal share in the cattle. And let's say, Marge and Chambliss was online earlier. We'll use them as an example. They're family too. But Chambliss can't say to his mom, oh, I checked the ranch over at Big Boquillas this past weekend, and Mom, your cow was just laying down there in the arroyo. That can't be said on Big Boquillas. And the reason why I say everybody has an equal share in the operation is so that you have that same compassion for a down cow that's down the arroyo in order to make that operation work. So a lot of the family issues have to go, and everybody has to have an equal share within that ranch to make it operational and profitable. So it's going to be a task, but it can be done, because we've got some associations within our ranch program too that have been working for so many years too. So I know it can be done.
Do ranch lessees receive any sort of lease credit for improvements that are made. I understand a producer can attain funding through various grants such as FSA, USDA, etc. But if the producer makes so many improvements and doesn't have the guarantee of winning a bid after 20 years, it seems disheartening to have made improvements for another producer to reap the benefits.
Yes, each of the ranchers can make improvements on the ranches, and we would abate that off the lease payment. But a lot of those improvements have to come into our office in writing first. Let's say if some of these ranches don't even have corrals. So if somebody were to want to build a new infrastructure, that would be, a new corral, whether it be made by wood posts and wire fencing or so forth, or we've got some producers that actually put in a whole new pipe corral. Now that will be costly, but as long as it's in writing, then we can abate that off the lease payment. But on the other hand, there are quite a few ranches that do need improvements, but are near their expiration of their contract. And that's where I've seen quite a few of them that didn't want to do any improvement just because of them possibly losing the lease. And then, like you said, the next person would benefit from that. That's understandable. So, but they definitely can be compensated for that through their lease payment.
If you guys have any questions, my email is there on the screen. And then also invite you guys onto our Facebook page, New Mexico NAPS 6. There we have how-to videos, some posts on there helping you with your ranching and gardening needs. And then also we do post the webinars that we have had, and including today, it'll be on there. And also we do have monthly newsletters. So if you guys would like to be included on the newsletter,